Evening, everyone. I still see people kind of coming in through the waiting room. We have a big crowd tonight. This event about FAFSA, and we have another event next week about CSS profile, tend to be the biggest of the years because there's a lot that people have questions about. So that's why we do these events. I'm Debbie Schwartz, founder of Road to College and the Paying for College 101 Facebook group. And I'm here tonight with Eddie from Juno. And Eddie will give a little bit about his background and also talk about Juno. And then, of course, we're going to talk about FAFSA and what people need to know to get started. But before we dig in, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping, and that is to tell you that tonight's session is actually a Zoom meeting. It's not an official webinar. They act very similar. The only reason I say that is because everybody has come in and they are muted. And particularly because we're going to have a large group tonight, if you can keep yourself muted, that would be great. If you want to put your video on, I see a few people have already. I love that. It's just nice to see people's faces these days as opposed to the black box. So that's always nice to see who's out there. Thank you for turning your video on. And this is recorded. We send out an email tomorrow with a link to the recording and a link to the slides. So you can, absorb what we talk about tonight and not feel like you have to take notes if you don't want to, because you'll get everything tomorrow if you want to rewatch anything or look through the slides. And with that, if you could, we always like to know who's watching, where you're watching from, and what year in high school or college your student is, because I know that we also invited families that have existing college students. That would be great if you can put it in the chat. And also feel free to put questions in the chat. Eddie and I were talking before we opened the Zoom. I'll look at the chat constantly. If I sometimes, I will just answer your question directly, or if it's a question that I see repeatedly asked, I might interrupt Eddie and we'll ask the question so everybody can hear. And then, of course, at the end, after all the slides, we go back and we try and answer as many questions as we can. So with that said, it's a little bit of a long night. I think we should get started right away. And I'd love to introduce Eddie. And I'd love, Eddie, if you share your background with people and then a little bit about Juno, and then let's get started about FAFSA.
Let's do it. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I see folks are tuning in from all over the place. I just saw a barrage of messages in the chat, which is great to see. Seniors. I think I saw some college freshmen and so multiple students and a high school junior. Thanks for being here. I'm Eddie Chibanu. I'm here eager to share a little bit more about sort of this process. I love talking about college affordability, the college process. So I have a background in college admissions before coming to join the Juno team. I was previously a college admissions officer, so I understand this September October timeline very well with all of the admissions applications that are going to be due very soon. I was in the admissions office previously at Williams College, a small liberal arts school in Massachusetts. I was in the admissions office at Yale University, one of the Ivy League institutions, and then after that, I was actually a college counselor. So I worked directly with families, directly with students in supporting them through all aspects of the college process, both the application process, the financial aid process. And so I love talking about this now at this point in time, because so many times with families in the the first couple months of I'll just say senior year, I'll talk to the seniors here. Students are admissions focused, and a huge part of the admissions process is thinking about affordability, is understanding the FAFSA, is thinking about what schools are a good financial fit in the same ways that they are a good academic fit and social fit, on many other factors as well. So this is very relevant on this as current high school seniors in the room and parents of high school seniors are thinking about navigating through this process. But of course, I hope a lot of the folks younger than that are it's relevant for you. And then certainly for college students, this is a process that you have to go through every single year. You do have to apply to FAFSA, and you have to apply for financial aid every single year. So that's sort of my background in sort of the places that I've been at as well. And I actually came to Juno because I'm a current MBA student at the Kellogg School of Management. I found out about Juno because I use Juno for my loans. So I'm a user first and foremost. I'm practicing what I preach. I was actually able to get lower rates through Juno than I was even through the federal government. I found out about Juno actually a little bit late. I ended up canceling my federal loan. I was within the cancellation period. I'd gone through the whole process, filled out FAFSA, all of that, the fun stuff. Ended up finding out, went on the website, filled out my information, got a lower rate through Juno for my program specifically, and I've been using Juno ever since. So I'm a happy user. I love saving money. I love saving other people money. I came from a low income background as well. This is really important in me and my journeys. I was the first in my family to go to college. Thankfully, I went to a school undergrad where I didn't have to take out loans because my school provided a full need-based package. The first time that I have interacted with loans is in the grad school process. But again, I recognize that that's not always the case. And for many families, particularly with some of the changes in federal loan policy that we'll discuss shortly, that is something that is going to be more a part of the family story in terms of needing to take out loans. So let's jump in. Again, I'll try to keep an eye on the chat, and I know Debbie will as well if things are coming up along the way. But please let me know if I can help with any. We'll have lots of time for questions. Um, so there we go. So we'll just talk a little bit about the timeline and then where different elements of the academic year in terms of where we are now. The FAFSA is actually open already. They typically open it October 1st. They've opened it up early this year. So we'll talk about the different parts of the timeline where Juno fits into that, and then just go through step by step. What is the FAFSA, the things that you need for it, and then go through a little bit more in depth on the various different sections of it. So let's get started and jump in. So this is the position that we're in now, especially as you're applying for college. If you are considering an early application program, this timeline is going to be expedited for you compared to the regular decision application, where early applications are due in November, and you'll hear back in December. And typically, you'll also get a financial aid package as well with your admissions decision. Regular decision deadlines will happen in January. And financial aid deadlines may be a little bit later than the admissions decision. They may be around the same time. Just be sure to be mindful of all your deadlines so that you submit all of your documentation on time. And then you'll get a financial aid package either once admissions decisions come out sometime in March usually, and then you'll be able to compare. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but once you'll get your student aid index, your SAI, we'll talk a little bit about this as well. You apply to college, particularly in the regular decision round. This can be expedited again if you are applying anywhere in the early round. You'll get your financial aid package. You have the opportunity to appeal your financial aid award, and we'll talk about criteria for an appeal. Then decide which school to attend and look through different options on paying for college. And then every year tuition will be due most often in August or September. So I just wanted to share really quickly, we're going to return back to this, but this is going to be a huge factor in the decision making of how to pay for college. So I wanted to touch on it now, and we'll spend more time on it later towards the end as well. For any current students, because I know there are some current college students here, if you do need to take out a loan, if you do so before July or by June 30th, excuse me, the end of the month, before July 1st, then you can be grandfathered into the old Parent Plus rules. So as a result of the changes from the Big Beautiful Bill that was just passed a few months ago, there are implications for borrowing. And so there's a cap of $20,000 per year on the Parent Plus loans. We'll talk a lot more about Parent Plus, but I know some folks come and go. So I just want to make sure you have this information at the very beginning. We'll spend more time talking about it, but just really quickly, there's a cap on Parent Plus loans of 20,000 per year, and then a lifetime of $65,000 per child or per dependent. All right, so where Juno fits into this, we've started as an organization for students, basically with two students coming together when they were in business school, figuring out if there's a better way to pay for college. Ultimately, they got together, a group of their peers from other schools around the country came together, were able to negotiate a lower rate. And that's essentially what Juno does. We pull together families who are in need of various different loans on the undergrad side and then on the grad side as well, and then use that collective bargaining power to negotiate with different lenders. Now, the reason we've been able to be so successful is because there really is strength in numbers. So we host sort of a group every single year where we just try to build out as many as high a volume of students and parents who need to take out a loan, and ultimately going from there, we go using the size of that group, we go to the various different lenders and we say, this is the size of our group. Essentially, what are you able to offer? So the more families that we do have in our group, the better rates we are able to get. Now, this doesn't compel you to join Juno, to use Juno in any way. If you want to join our group, please feel free to use the link. You'll get these slides after, so you can click on the link here. But again, it's ultimately what it is just agreeing to be part of a group that you don't have to commit to, but where we leverage the strength in numbers, and lenders are willing to trade on some of the margins that they have for the volume that they're able to receive. We run the negotiation every spring and then see what lenders are willing to what discounts lenders are willing to offer to the Juno family. So ultimately, it's not compelling you for anything. It's just wanting to be part of an option, and then ultimately you can explore what all your options are. So again, there's no cost, there's no credit check or anything like that. You don't have to do anything to join. It's just very helpful for us. The more families we have in our pool, typically the better rates we're able to secure. All right, so let's get into it. We're going to talk about the FAFSA. And there are other webinars, a whole series of webinars that we'll have over the next couple of months that will talk about the Student Aid Index, appealing your financial aid award, and then ultimately looking for loans if necessary. Okay, so key things to know. The free application for federal student aid is a free application first and foremost. I always say this because there are scams out there. So it's FAFSA.gov. You will never have to pay for the FAFSA. It's in the name, but it's a document in an application that gets you access to different types of financial aid. Some of it does need to be paid back. Some of it does not. It does require you to submit a FAFSA every single year. Now, it's not meant to be an unnecessary hassle or burden, but the annual requirement is meant to accommodate for changes on an annual basis. So whether you had a gain in income or a loss in income, for example, family circumstances change all the time. Maybe another child has entered in college. So there may be ways in which colleges are able to accommodate some of these factors in the calculations that they're able to in the calculations of how much they're going to ask you to pay for college. Now, I will say as well, filling out the FAFSA, it's open now, so you have access to it. It's great to be talking about this at this point in late September and early October, because oftentimes, when I was working in a high school, some families would put it off until later, and you can do that. I don't recommend doing that. The deadline for the FAFSA isn't until the end of June, technically speaking, but the earlier you can fill it out, the better, because you may qualify for financial aid that will get prioritized to students who fill it out on an earlier basis. Not all schools have endless pockets to meet 100% demonstrated need, for example. So it may be determined based on the timing of your application, and then also there may be some state-specific scholarships or funds that you may have access to as a result of the FAFSA. We'll get more into that as well. The other thing I'll say is don't assume that you won't get aid just because your income or savings are high. Sometimes the FAFSA is still going to be a requirement for other types of aid from schools, and they just need to have it on file. Okay, so different types of aid that's available through the FAFSA. We have the Pell Grant, FSEOG grant, and Federal Work Study Grant. These are great in the sense that they don't have to be paid back. The Pell Grant was just updated. The numbers were just updated. It was doubled in terms of how much funding you can receive. These are typically offered to students with the highest financial need. Now, federal supplemental education opportunity grants as well are school specific. And these are funds that will run out because schools will get a limited amount every year. So this is another reason to apply early and to have all your documentation in order. And then again, federal work study as well is a student will get a job that is subsidized or paid for through the federal government. In terms of that's where the funding source comes from, and you can generally earn a couple $1,000s from that. That does require an exchange of labor for the funding. Now, there's other loans that you can take out that do need to be paid back that are part of the FAFSA process. Direct loans are for students. They sometimes known as the Stafford loans. These are available for students to take out. Some of the current college students, this may be part of your financial aid package already. We'll get into the limits of that, but for freshman year, it's $5,500. And then Parent Plus loan. Um, uh, I forgot to update this slide. It's forgive me for that with the changes. It's not the full cost of attendance. It's going to be up to $20,000 per year. Now we'll get more into that towards the end as well. But this is available to parents, and this would be an opportunity for parents uh, to leverage in order to pay for the cost of college. Now, again, access to certain state financial aid or aid from schools can be dependent on FAFSA completion, so that's why it's worth filling out nonetheless. The the official deadline, I'm highlighting this specifically for the high school seniors in the room, in the virtual room, or parents of high school seniors. Your official deadline will be June 30th of 2027. So again, for any current college freshman, for example, to be more specific as well, if you are looking to take out federal loans, you can do so by June 30th of 2026, so this academic year. If you do so, you will be grandfathered into the old rules of the Parent Plus, where you can borrow up to the cost of attendance. But a lot of what I'm going to focus on is assuming that or I guess for any current college students, regardless of what you're in, this is relevant. And then I'll focus on as well with the changes that are implemented from 2026 onwards, because this will still be relevant if you're still in college as well. Now, again, state deadlines, you'll get access to these slides. You can find all those deadlines in the link here. Some of them are first come, first serve. Access to funding is cherished. It's not always available. So again, I can't emphasize enough applying early. Okay, so what do you need to complete FAFSA? First, we have to decide who is going to need to submit the FAFSA. FAFSA defines a contributor, or this is going to be the person who is responsible for including their information on the FAFSA. Typically, in a lot of cases, it's a parent, and the contributor needs to complete the FAFSA in order for it to be considered finished. It has to be completed and signed. So first, it'll be important to determine whether or not a contributor is needed. If a student is considered independent, then additional information would no longer be requested from a contributor. This is why this is the first part of the process. So being independent has a very specific definition within the context of the FAFSA. It has nothing to do with dependency on in terms of tax status or tax filling out tax information. Uh, Being an independent student means that a student meets one of the following criteria. If a student is considered independent, they are the only one that needs to fill out the FAFSA. Parent information will not be asked for and it won't be required. If a student does not meet the strict definitions of independent students, then one or both parents will need to fill out the FAFSA. So you can see some of the criteria listed here. If a student is a graduate student, if they're in the military, for example, if they're homeless or at risk of being homeless. These are very narrow definitions that will require supporting documentation in order for your independent status to be approved. Now, if a student is not considered independent, and in fact they are a dependent student, then that's where we figure out who else needs to be considered on the FAFSA. Each contributor has to fill it out, as I mentioned earlier, and then with the definition of a parent, it's going to be a legal, a biological, excuse me, or adoptive parent, and so. It is again, a very strict definition. Grandparents or legal guardians, they won't count unless a student has been legally adopted. Um, I was looking into this a little bit earlier. Like there's strict definitions and differences between guardianship and adoption. And so just wanted to clarify that in terms of who is going to be counted in this and ultimately who then will become a contributor. Now, I know we also get questions about divorced parents and who needs to fill it out in that case. So if parents are divorced, the parent who provides the majority support to the student is going to be the one who needs to fill out the form. If it is equal, which if it's exactly 50-50 in terms of providing financial support to the student, then the parent with the higher income and assets will be the one who's expected to fill out the FAFSA information. If there is any child support involved, child support should be included. It should be reported as it's considered in the financial aid calculation. Now, each contributor will need to fill out will need an FSA ID, a Federal Student Aid ID, in order to process the FAFSA. Now, you'll need to include your name, date of birth, social security number. If you don't have a social security number, that's okay. There's a different process that you can fill out for that. But a student does need to have a social security number in order to go through and complete the FAFSA. Now, this is a change from last year, this year. I'm hoping it works well, but there's now an automatic Social Security match that allows for an immediate verification. Before, you used to have to apply for an FSA ID, wait 1 to 3 days, and which was even more important to get started early. Now, as long as you have a Social Security, as long as you have matched your tax documents with your FAFSA, then information should get pulled automatically. So you'll need to grant permissions for that in order to complete the FAFSA. But that will pull in, and it should allow you to complete the information to get your FSA ID and then fill out the FAFSA. As you then need to collect the information. First, again, I mentioned this, you'll need a social security number. A student will need to be a US citizen. Will need to have a social security number. If a parent does not, again, there's an alternate process for you to fill out in order to still move through the process. You still can. Um, you'll need your federal income tax returns. This will get pulled again automatically. So colleges will use what's called prior year. So for the 26-27 academic year, you'll need 2024 tax information. Now, any other assets that you might have, any other untaxed income, you want to make sure you have a comprehensive view of what the resources that are available at your disposal in order to be able to include that on any documents that are, and to include that information on the documents that you'll be expected to fill out. Additionally, as you go through the application, you can list up to 20 schools on the FAFSA. I recommend doing so because if you only list one, only one school will get your information. So the schools that you will be applying to, whatever range of schools are on your list, whether it's career school, trade school, any colleges or universities, make sure to include them on the FAFSA so that the colleges get their form, get the form. If you do apply to more than 20, you can submit 21st and then just wait a few days, make sure that information gets sent through, and then come back to the form, include a new set of schools, and then send the list out again. All right, so let's go through the FAFSA. When you create your ID, here's the application page that you'll see. Just make sure you select the correct option. If you're a student, fill out the student portion. If you're a parent, fill out the parent portion. If you make a mistake here, you can eventually go back and do it. It's just going to save you a lot of headache and time to get it right the first time. Then this is the piece that I was mentioning earlier. You have to consent to the IRS transferring your data. You won't be able to actually complete the FAFSA or submit it without this being the case. You have to approve this, and this ultimately will pull in your information, so it's easier to fill out. The FAFSA is shorter, it's simplified now, and part of that is actually a result of automatic data transfer, so that it pulls in information already that you no longer have to include. So again, this is really important. Please make sure to consent to this. If you don't consent to it, you might fill out all of the information, but colleges won't receive your FAFSA form. So we'll walk through the next different sections that are important to know and cover each of the different pieces that you'll need to fill out. So under the personal circumstances, this is what we were alluding to earlier. This is first because it'll then it'll change the workflow of the FAFSA based on the responses that you select. If you are an independent student and you meet any of the criteria that you see listed here, then this will be able to identify that and change your workflow so that contributor information is no longer going to be asked of you. Now, if you are a dependent student and you don't meet any of the criteria that are listed here, then a parent will be needed. Parent information will be needed. This section next is just a very quick, usually it's not yeah, it's super quick and easy to fill out. It has no impact on financial aid. These are just the questions that were asked when FAFSA was created, and they're continuing to be asked, but they'd have no impact in the process at all. So it's very straightforward to go through. Then, as we think income, as we get into the financial piece of it, the income that you report on your 2024 tax information will get transferred as a result of the automatic transfer. So that's why it's necessary in order to provide that consent. You can fill out the FAFSA on paper if you want to. Generally, it's just a lot easier to fill it out online. You'll get information a lot quicker. It's a lot easier to do so. But you can still fill it out on paper if you choose so.
And Eddie, just so you know, I'll put the link if people want it in the chat for the PDF version of the written form. If nothing else, sometimes it's just interesting, helpful if people want to see it because it gives you a better understanding of what the formula is if you actually are looking through the PDF. But it's something you really shouldn't fill out. You should just use it for, an understanding and background information. If you can fill out the regular online version, that's exactly what you should do.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. It's going to save you a lot of time to be able to have a lot of information already pulled in. Now, what's again really important to note to remember is uh, data might be a little bit outdated by the time the 2026-2027 academic year rolls in. Or again, for any students who are for any current college students, if you haven't already filled out the FAFSA, you still can. Again, you have up until the end of June this year to do so. So they will use 2 years of data prior to the time that you enroll. Uh, this may not always be as accurate as your current status is or current position is in terms of your income or assets. So you are able to fill out special circumstances appeal with your financial office, and we encourage that if anything has changed. There's been the shift to prior year was intended to allow more complete FAFSAs such that every family would have uh, tax information to report, and it wouldn't be dependent on, if you filed your taxes on an earlier time frame and were able to get it back before college applications were due. So it worked out well in some ways. There's some drawbacks as a result of it. Now, in thinking about the asset side, um, when you are filling out the FAFSA, you're reporting assets at that current moment in time. So you'll include things like cash, anything that you have in a savings account or a checking account. You'll include anything with respect to investments or real estate that you have, any businesses, investment firms. This year as well, you will have to report any foreign income that's earned, so income outside of the US. So all of that will be factored into your SAI. It will be factored into the financial aid calculation and the amount that you'll be ultimately then expected to pay. Now, what's not included, and we'll get into this a little bit more as well, is the value of your primary residence or also your retirement accounts. So retirement is considered protected income. That won't be a factor in the FAFSA calculations, uh, but it is still important to know to differentiate that from any other kinds of investments that you might have. So as we were just mentioning, if you have anything like a 529 plan for your child or in the student's name, then that would be included as reportable assets. If you have multiple 529 plans for multiple children, then you'd only include the 529 plan for that specific student as it relates to their application process. You wouldn't report the 529 plan of another student if they are not the beneficiary on that account. Anything else, any other trust funds or mutual funds, any money market funds, as you've seen, any stocks, real estate that you might own, or businesses. This year as well, there is a change in terms of farms and small businesses as well, in terms of reporting assets. So there are some exclusions as a result of the changes in the bill as well. But ultimately, you'll want to report any of the assets that are available to you. You won't report your primary home. If you do have a secondary home, that is something that you will include. Maybe it's a vacation home or any other residence. If you own a rental property, anything outside of your primary home does need to be included. Again, your retirement plans won't be part of that. It is considered protected income. Any other things as well, like a car that you have, any jewelry, you may have various other types of assets that aren't necessarily included in this. Um, won't be included, won't be reported as an asset on the FAFSA. Uh, And finally, as well, any 529 plans that are owned by a grandparent or any other family member do not need to be included in the assets. Now, one piece here that's really important is was a change when FAFSA was when FAFSA was also when FAFSA was also changed and modified. Uh, they changed how family size is considered. So it used to be the case where if you had multiple children in college, let's say you had two students in college, then your the number that you got at the end of the calculation, which was used to be called the estimated family contribution, would be reduced by the number of children, essentially divided by the number of children. So if you had to, you've split your income in between two students, then that would significantly change your estimated family contribution. Now, what's different now is that family size is not going to be reported in the same way. So this the family size is or excuse me, family I was referring to number in college. I was getting a little bit ahead of myself. Family size is reported on the based on the number of dependents that you have. But if your family size has changed, this is a really important part of some of the application every single year. If it has changed since your previous taxes were filed, then that's something to update with the financial office. So this could be the case as well, where either if you are supporting elderly care and you're providing more than half of the care for them, any students that are still college aged, maybe not living at home, they still are considered dependent students. So that would be included. The family size would be included in the student aid index. Now, the number in colleges is what has changed. And so before, what was previously reported as the number of children in college would get essentially almost divided between, the number of children based on your estimated family contribution. Now, it's not the case anymore where it's directly where it directly changes your student aid index. Um, but what's really key to know is if you have multiple children in college, financial officers will understand that. They understand that you have that your income is spread amongst two, potentially sometimes even three, maybe more students. So you have the opportunity to submit appeal. This is also common with students who have with families who have multiple, so if twins or triplets. So, or more. So in that case, you want to make sure to communicate with your financial aid office because you do have uh, multiple children that are in college. It's not directly calculated. There's a way in which it tries to account for in the SAI, but financial officers are able to have some flexibility where it's both an art and a science. So they're not looking, they'll input information into their calculations, but they're also able to take into account kind of real world both anecdotal and qualitative information to make some adjustments in that. So this could be a case in which you do actually submit an appeal to the school in seeking out more funds. Great. So as you think about the listing the actual schools, you have to list at least one college on the FAFSA. I mentioned this earlier. You can list up to 20, but you have to include at least one for the school to go to. The order in which you list schools can make an impact. So not many states don't have any requirements for ordering. However, there are a couple. There are a handful, and so you can click the link to find them. Some of them. I used to live in Massachusetts, and so this you'll see it listed here as an example where it has to be the first eligible college listed. Vermont, for example, says you have to have a Vermont college listed in your top three. So some states may have specific requirements in terms of placement on the FAFSA in order to be considered for state level financial aid programs. Please be aware of that if that is the case for the state that you reside in, because you don't want to miss out on any state aid programs as a result of, putting a school second on your list or third or fourth if they require you to be within a certain, either within the top school or within a certain range or number of schools on your list. Just make sure to check it out. It's quick, just a quick search, because this could impact your eligibility for aid. You may not necessarily have an interest in that school. So again, maybe you live in Massachusetts and you want to apply, you at least want to have UMass Amherst, the flagship state university there, or any other public Massachusetts college on your list. Just list it so that you have it as an option. And then ultimately you can decide, if let's say you do qualify for in-state merit aid at UMass Amherst, you then have the flexibility to choose one option with maybe a very generous financial aid package compared to another, maybe out-of-state option, and whether or not you get funding from that school is to be determined. You want to give yourself that option, and that's the key here. You don't want to limit it at the beginning based on the ordering, if that matters for your state. And then finally, please make sure that everyone signs the FAFSA form. All contributors so if you have, the student and then 2 contributors, please make sure everyone signs it so that your FAFSA is complete and ready to go. You'll get a confirmation email after. But it is considered officially complete when all required sections are filled out, all contributors have provided their consent, and the signatures are good to go. Just double check that. If you have any concerns, reach out to your contributors, and just ensure that that they are on top of this, because it can be easy to forget if you don't scroll all the way to the bottom. Okay. I'm not checking the chat.
Oh, there's
So
been a lot of questions. I would just keep going.
okay,
Then,
maybe
yeah.
we'll keep going, and then we'll turn our attention to the questions. So after you submit the FAFSA, then you'll see the submission summary. So you can log into Student Aid and then access it with your username and password. You can view the summary and then select the eligibility overview tab. Now here you'll be able to see eligibility for your Pell Grant if you qualify in any federal student aid that you receive. Additionally, here's where you'll see the Student Aid Index. The Student Aid Index is a number that you'll receive. It is not your financial aid package. It's not the award that you'll receive from colleges. It's just a number that's calculated based on the information that you provided. And it will help calculate your ultimate financial aid application. This is what colleges will use to calculate that final number. So we'll have a whole presentation on the Student Aid Index, so we won't go too much in depth here. But it's just a number. It's an index that goes from a negative 1,500 to a really large number. The important thing to know is the lower your number that you see as part of your student aid index, the more financial aid you can expect to receive. So lower number equates to higher financial need. And this is the number that schools will use for both federal aid, any state aid, and institutional aid. So again, the student aid index is not a financial aid award. It's not the total aid that you'll get from a school. It's not what your family is going to be expected to pay for college. It's a number that's used in the financial aid calculations to ultimately then determine what that final award package will be. So it's a starting point. There can be some flexibility, and this is where appealing financial aid and providing documentation can help financial aid officers adjust the SAI in order to then be able to recalculate a financial perhaps a better financial aid package or a more generous financial aid package. So again, it is the starting point. It's what aid officers will use in how much aid that they will ultimately then provide. So you will get an official award notice from the financial aid package around the same time that you receive an admission offer. Sometimes it's the same same at the same time. Sometimes it's a slight delay, but you'll generally get it around the same time. That way you can compare your admission you can get your admissions decision and then compare 8 packages to other schools that you've been admitted to. A few final things, sort of as we near, we'll be able to turn our attention to questions as well soon here. But think about at the purchasing, the timing of a purchase that you may need can be a factor in the SAI. Now, what I want to be really careful here is I'm not going to, this is not to encourage families to like spend a lot of money in the hopes that your SAI will then suddenly go down. Because the amount, it may like, I don't want anyone to make, irresponsible financial decisions as a result. What is important is if you anticipate, some kind of large purchase, maybe you need a new roof on your home, or if there's a new purchase of a vehicle, if you know that that expense is forthcoming, maybe a car is not as much of a necessity as a leaky roof is, but the SAI is considered based on all of your assets. So if you have savings, for example, in a savings account, then that will be calculated in the SAI. So if you have a slight reduction in that savings account, in order to pay for a new roof, for example, then that will reduce the total assets that you do report to the FAFSA. Now, again, this may not have a huge role, so I want to be mindful. I want to be wary of families making entire decisions based on this, because there may not be, depending on the rest of your assets, this may have very minimal to no impact on your SAI number. So it's very dependent on family circumstances and the rest of your profile. Making sure to report net assets. Grandparent 529 plans, as we mentioned earlier, are not considered an asset that's reported on the FAFSA. It's not included in the student aid index. So if a parent does have a 529 plan for a grandchild, then that is not going to be added into the FAFSA. Making sure your family size is up to date. This is an important factor in the overall numbers, the SAI numbers. It can increase your income protection allowance based on the household size. And then again, if something doesn't, if either something was not included, if there's been a change in your circumstances, then please contact the financial aid office, because you will be able to submit an appeal, and that's where submitting appropriate documentation can help reduce both your change your SAI and in turn reduce your financial aid your financial aid contribution. So it could increase your financial aid package. All right. So I mentioned I'd come back to this as well. Uh, with current, just a note to current college students, if you do still need to take out a loan, maybe for second semester, and you do anticipate wanting, or I guess if you do anticipate needing it, if you haven't already taken out something for the full year, then it's worth at least considering taking out even just a small amount of the Parent Plus loan to give yourself the option to be grandfathered into the old terms, which was up to the cost of attendance, as you see in the current policy. So you can give yourself that option, that flexibility, if that's still relevant for you. Now, for current seniors and anyone younger, that won't be an option. So you'll have to the maximum that you'll be able to borrow is $20,000 per year, and then a lifetime cap of $65,000. So it might be the case where you need to borrow 20,000 for the first 3 years, and then you only have 5,000 remaining in the senior year of your child's college career. So that's where these limits come into play.
And Eddie, there have been a lot of questions about this, so maybe just to
Sure.
clarify, and the questions have mainly been, is the 65,000 limit per family? Like it's just a little confusion. And just to clear it up, it's
Yeah.
65,000 per student from both parents. So I'm trying to think of a better way to explain or say it, but each student has a max of 65,000 that their parents, both of them together, combined, can borrow for that student. So if you have multiple students, each student has that $65,000 limit from their parents.
Yeah, thank you for monitoring that. It is a lifetime limit. So again, whether a student whether a student will graduate in 4 years or 5 years, there is a cap on the total amount. The federal government is stepping back from from administering loans, and so they are essentially what that's going to create is a strong demand for the private loan servicers to enter. And hopefully, again, we'll see like ultimately what happens. Hopefully that does introduce competition into the marketplace so that, a lot of families will, well, families will hopefully be able to get lower rates as a result of that. Now, it it of course is going to be dependent on your circumstances, your background, income, credit score, things like that. And so, will the for some families, Parent Plus was the best option that was available. For other families, they could secure better rates through the private loan market. It just depends on each family's profile. So again, I mentioned this earlier. I won't go through this again, but essentially Juno was created to help students and families who do need to take out loans. We always want to ensure that families are maximizing grants and scholarships first and foremost. This is a huge point where if you can get free money, that's always a great thing. So let's get as much free money as we can, and then ultimately, if you do need to take out loans, then our goal is to ensure that you're at least getting loans with the best rates on the market. And so again, we do that by having families pull together who are interested in this process or who may need to take out loans. And then we go to different lenders, have conversations with different lenders, and essentially say, this is the size of our group. What deals are you able to offer? And then again, lenders are willing to trade. They give discounts in order for the volume of our collective buying power in order to then to secure the deal for families. So we're in the phase now where we're building a negotiation group. We do still have, if any current college students need to take out a loan, that's still available. So if you need something for the fall semester, you can still do that through our website. But we're also transitioning now into starting to build the negotiation group. Again, there's no commitment. Like you really don't have to sign up for anything. You don't have to use Juno for your loans. What we're asking for is essentially to join a mailing list. And what that allows us to do is to bring the collective group and ultimately find a better rate for all the families in the group so that it may be an option, at least for you to consider. You don't have to go for it, but the more families we have, the more compelling option that we're able to present to families with better deals. If you do have any questions, we have a lot of individual calls with families. I speak with a lot of parents one-on-one. We're happy to provide that support as you're going through this process. I've had a lot of conversations with families as well. Again, we're not pushing irresponsible borrowing onto families. I've had a lot of conversations with parents where ultimately the federal Parent Plus loan made the most sense. But again, now this upcoming year is going to be a little bit different because the Parent Plus loan used to be the cap. Essentially, um, if you uh, if you got a worse rate through the private market, the Parent Plus was always available to you. So you could always just, rely on the 8.94% interest rate if you were seeing double-digit interest rates in the private loan market, then 10 times out of 10 times I'd say go with the federal option, because you're better off doing that and saving money on interest than you are taking out a high interest loan. Um, it's going to be a little trickier now just with the parent plus caps. So this is where we'll have to, families are going to have to be a little bit more mindful about the costs of borrowing and ensuring that, you know, the costs don't end up being too prohibitive. And that's sort of where we're kind of all in this collective situation where we want to drive down those costs as much as possible through the collective group that we have. All right. We covered a lot. Thank you all for your patience there.
Okay,
Let's
a lot
see.
of questions. I'll just kind of start putting some of them out. Um, there's, I think, a little confusion, or maybe just something to clear up about um, if people have multiple students, are they filling out FAFSA multiple times, or are they doing it once?
Great question. So the FAFSA will be filled out for each student. So every student needs an FSA ID. The parents will fill it out as well for that student. So if you have multiple children, you would need to go through multiple children in college at the same time. You'd have to go through the process for each child.
And kind of a similar question, somebody saying, I already have a student in college. Do I still have to fill out FAFSA?
Great question. Yes. Well, so I would say I would recommend filling out FAFSA every year, because again, as we highlighted, um, if you know you will have, ultimately, if not filling out FAFSA is probably most relevant, if you have zero expectation of ever needing any kind of support. Um, and are comfortable paying the full cost of tuition. So namely, like your income is so high that, that it wouldn't bother you to pay full cost of tuition. However, as I mentioned earlier, I still recommend FAFSA completion for low income families, middle income families, even high income families, because one, you can qualify for uh, you may not qualify for like the federal Pell Grant, for example, but you can still qualify for the federal loans, the direct loan in the student's name, which we typically recommend if you do need to take out a loan first, then taking that loan out. It's at a 6.39% interest rate this year. There are loan forgiveness options for that. So generally, I recommend every student fill out the FAFSA, and taking out, if you need to, the federal direct loan in either the unsubsidized and the subsidized loan. Now, you may not qualify for the subsidized direct loan for the student, but you may still be able to take out the unsubsidized loan. So I still recommend filling out the FAFSA on an annual basis, um, even for, regardless of your financial situation. The other piece of that as well is because colleges may require it for any kind of scholarship consideration. They just need to have a FAFSA on file in order to process scholarship documents. So whether or not uh, you anticipate securing any scholarships, it's always great to have. I hope students are getting scholarships or any kind of institutional aid from your universities. So it's worth the time spent to fill out to have the documentation available, because what you don't want to be in the position of is not having filled out the information, your school not being able to process any kind of scholarship or financial aid on your behalf, and then running into issues. Um, the changes to the FAFSA have made it a lot easier to complete. So the average time is now about 20 minutes. Something maybe upwards of an hour if but it's worth spending a little bit of time sitting down and filling it out.
So
And
there's a
it
few
is it is
questions.
on an annual basis.
Sorry, there's a few questions related to retirement assets. Somebody is saying, do I have to report a pension? Do I have to report a 403(b)? Do I have to report an inherited IRA? Maybe if you can just address the retirement assets in general and whether or not they are included in FAFSA.
Yeah, so retirement assets are generally considered protected income. So um, colleges will ask for it generally so that parents can, they may ask you to fill it out so that you can understand the difference and separate it from
But FAFSA doesn't ask for it. If they're being asked for it, it's on the CSS
on this.
profile. So
Yeah,
just to separate that because that might confuse people.
correct. Yeah,
So right. So do not include retirement assets in FAFSA, but as Eddie was referring to, if your student is applying to a school that is also asking for the CSS profile, which is like maybe 330 schools that ask for that, they may, and not just may, they probably likely will ask for what your retirement assets are, but that's a different form than the FAFSA.
correct. Yeah, so exactly, any retirement is not going to be considered in the FAFSA.
Okay, another good question is somebody's asking, do you get a new ID each year or do you use the same one over and over again?
Good question. I'm pretty sure it's the same
Right.
ID. I was like, I don't imagine it would change.
You know, you
Um,
it's actually to that point, you use the same FAFSA ID every year for you and your student. So, don't lose it. Like, make sure you remember it. You store it someplace, the
yeah,
password, all that type of stuff. But to that point too, if you may have had student loans, like, if you had at some point in your lifetime created an FSA ID, you have to use that one from when it was created. So, just for those parents out there who might have had um, a, um, a federal student loan account and had an FSA ID at some point,
yeah,
you're going to need to recover it
yeah.
because it's
It's
tied to your
tied to
social
social.
security number.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
I
right.
was about to say exactly the same thing.
So that's why it's not like easy to just kind of create a new one.
Well,
Okay. Then also questions in general about people asking, well, what if I have other debt? Where is that included?
yeah. So other debts. Now, this could be a situation where you would submit an appeal. So depending on the kind of debt, I think is important. If you have sort of high consumer debt, you can report that, but that would be, I think the type of debt can impact the level of um, flexibility within the financial aid office. So, for example, if you have high medical bills as a result um, of maybe a surgery or even ongoing medical expenses, that absolutely should be something that's reported. Um, Now, again, it's worth submitting an appeal because you're able to potentially lower your SAI for any kind of expenses that you may have. So there might be a reason why you have high consumer debt, for example. So any of those pieces are worth reporting and appealing on the directly with the financial aid office. They are trying to identify and assess general financial health of a family in the sense of whether or not they're able to make certain exceptions. So, things like excessive levels of debt or high levels of debt, regardless of the cause, can be a factor where they may be able to make some adjustments on the back end.
But to be also clear, there is no place like the FAFSA and the CSS profile don't ask for like what debt do you have. They don't ask, do you have student loans? Do you have credit card debt?
Correct.
So you're not actually going to be reporting that anywhere. And what Eddie is referring to is um, you can appeal certain types of debt. I mean, to tell you the truth, I don't think you can appeal the fact that you have credit card debt, but it's really more like debt related to, situations which you couldn't control, like, a medical situation. And so that is debt that you can describe and explain about in a financial aid appeal, but it's not going to kind of fall under any line item in the FAFSA. Um, there were questions about UGMA and UTMA accounts and if they need to be reported and who reports them.
Yep. So those would be reported. Um, so generally these accounts would be considered in um, would include the student as the beneficiary. So that would be one of the as you see here on the slide as well. I'll just stay on this. Um, it would be an asset that is that you're required to include.
And it is a student asset.
Mhm. Let's see.
Can
Like,
you,
if we could pay for his,
um, Eddie, did you have a slide that showed the parent assets versus the kids' assets? Or is it on here or no? Because somebody's saying the asset section was a little confusing because the kids section is very different than the parents.
Uh, no, I think I think it would have been this one.
Okay.
So assets that the student has as well as the parents will both be reported. They are considered the contributions from those assets um, will come at different rates. So if a student does have any assets, they'll be asked to contribute more of those assets to as part of the as part of to pay for the cost of college. There are because of on the family side, they're generally asked a smaller percentage that's calculated as the parent assets compared to the student assets. So a higher proportion of student assets will go towards the financial aid calculations versus the parent assets.
Does somebody ask the question, which is kind of interesting? I haven't seen this question asked. If the child is starting college in fall of 2026, why is the federal deadline for FAFSA June 2027?
So good question. So you students can students and families can uh, they technically can borrow at any point within the academic year. And so sort of legally that is the availability in terms of when the FAFSA has to be available for students until the next application cycle. And so I don't ever recommend applying to the FAFSA in June, or at any point towards the end of your high school, excuse me, towards the end of your college years. There may be, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a circumstance in which that might be relevant, but it's not relevant to most circumstances. So it's mainly open just because families need to legally have the option to take out a loan within at any point within that academic cycle. Um, but I would recommend submitting FAFSA as early as possible to maximize your consideration for aid on the federal side and the state side and the institutional side.
But one other thing about deadlines is um, the deadline we were just talking about, like of June 2027, that's the federal government's deadline.
Yeah.
Each college may have and will likely have a different deadline for financial aid. And particularly if your
Mhm.
student is applying early decision, um, those financial aid deadlines could be in November. So, so don't go by the federal deadline. You need to go by the college's deadline of when they want the financial aid forms.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't second that more. Please be mindful of state deadlines and institutional deadlines because you want to be considered for those scholarships and not miss out because you may have not kept track of those deadlines.
Oh, I'm just going to read this because this is a nice comment. And for those people who have multiple like students in college at the same time, this is helpful to hear. This person just wrote in the comments, I filed a special circumstance appeal at our college, letting them know we have multiple kids in college since last year's FAFSA didn't take multiple students in college into account anymore. We got extra money from the school. So that's good to know. We cannot promise that all the time, but you should definitely alert the colleges that you have multiple students in school at the same time and ask, if they can reconsider the aid that they've offered you.
Mhm.
This is interesting. Somebody's saying, I'm in college right now, it's the parent, and I applied for FAFSA as well. Will my daughter be affected by it?
Great question. In terms of applying for the FAFSA, that that won't be
I don't think
affected.
so. I think you will get your own SAI and your
Yeah.
daughter will get her SAI.
Yeah, I mean, that would be definitely a special circumstance to reach out to the admissions office, the financial aid office, excuse me, because I mean, you are both with college expenses for the both of you, that is absolutely an important consideration in the overall financial aid calculations and how an aid package is calculated. It's not common, it does happen, but it happens on a rare occasion. Oftentimes we focus on multiple children in college, but not in the case of a parent and a student being in college at the same time. So that's absolutely a situation to appeal and to clarify that situation.
So maybe we could just review, because there's been several questions about real estate. What real estate needs to be included in FAFSA and what real estate does not?
Mhm. Yep. So a family's primary residence is a family's primary residence is not. Let me go back to the slide. Is not considered to the home that you live in or the apartment. Here it is. Home that you live in is any kind of equity you have in your home won't be included. Now, it may be asked on for certain schools on the CSS profile. You'll hear more about that next week, I believe you said, Debbie. So
Hmm.
uh, be mindful of that. But in terms of the FAFSA, that's not a factor. Uh, any additional real estate that you own outside of that, whether it's any kind of secondary property, whether it's a vacation property, whether you rent it out, it isn't, it's an asset that you have available to you. And so uh, colleges will expect the value of that, whatever it is, whatever the asset is, to be included in their calculation. So, ultimately, if you, I'm, I'm not saying that families need to do this, but you have access and you have availability to sell a secondary residence or to sell an investment property if it's necessary to cover the costs. That's why additional real estate is factored in. It is an asset that is available to the family.
Uh, it's a question about family size. Somebody saying, I'm the caregiver for my mother who lives with us, but I file her taxes separately. Does she get included in our family size?
Great question. So she, not technically a dependent, if filing separately. Um, I'm gonna write this down. Because parental care, for the parents in the audience, your own parental care of grandparents to the students going to college, um, can be included in the family size if you're providing more than half of their living expenses, and they were then considered dependents. Actually, I'm not sure if I I believe you can still be able to consider them. I'm gonna write this down so
I
I'll
don't, yeah, my inclination is
care
to say that they can be
care
still
for.
considered, but I would need to kind of double check to be,
Mhm.
um, to say for sure.
Um, care for grandparents. Yeah, I'm writing that one down. It's a great question.
Huh. I have honestly, okay, so here's something I haven't come across. Somebody said, I started FAFSA and did consent to have tax information transferred, but it did not transfer. Do you suggest I continue and fill in information myself? I did file taxes, but not sure why it didn't transfer.
Well, I would I mean I would check first to see if that can be fixed. Because there should be it may have been the case where there's some the matching is not right, and maybe like I want to make sure that there's no issues secondhand if like somehow the social securities don't match, somehow the names don't match.
Oh, right.
Um, that would be my concern, just to ensure that the way that you filled out the information
Like
aligns
sometimes
with
honestly,
what's
even a
reported
middle
on.
initial.
Yeah, just ensuring that it that there's if it's not automatic, there's something that was broken in that chain. And so for to avoid like any kind of unknown negative consequences in the future, I would try to remedy that. You can fill out the information, but I would recommend trying to make sure that um, that's remedied first, because there may be some other issue going on.
Okay, so here's a question, maybe just again to confirm. Somebody is saying, I'm married, but we file our taxes separately. Do both parents have to complete FAFSA?
Yeah, so uh, as long as I mean, if you're married and as long as you're living in the same household as well, then you would fill out the both parents in that case would be considered contributors to on the student's FAFSA.
Uh, Somebody saying, does the order in which they put their school matter if they're not applying to any in-state schools?
Great question. So not if not it 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 may not matter at that point.
Yeah.
So the typically in-state scholarships or scholarships, yeah, in-state scholarships are reserved for students who reside in that state. If you're applying as an out-of-state student, you may potentially, rarely, but you may potentially qualify for some kind of scholarship at the university. It can happen, but that would be separate from the specific, generally the specific fund that a lot of colleges have to keep local students within state.
So this is an interesting question I hadn't come across. Somebody saying they're planning to go to community college and then transfer to a four-year college. Should we just list the community college or also the possible transfer colleges that they're going to be applying to?
If you if you are applying to community college first, you would submit the application you would include those in this year's application. If you then finish 2 years later, and you because you have to resubmit FAFSA every single year and apply for financial aid every year, at that time, then you would include the information. Then that's when you could send it to the schools that you end up transferring to. Um, you can list a college on your FAFSA and then not end up applying. That's fine. If you don't end up applying, match it to any application. If you're unsure, I mean, you can always go back. You can always go back and fill out the or send out the FAFSA. You don't have to have everything listed at once. It's just easier if you send it all at once. But again, you can send it out multiple times. If you do apply to more than 20 schools, which from an admissions in a former college admission officer and former college counselor perspective is a lot of schools. I generally don't recommend that many schools, but you can also submit the you can submit the FAFSA sort of multiple times if you decide to add schools to your list at a maybe a month later or at a different point in time. But if you're not applying to the schools right now, if you're planning again to apply to go to community college first, and then end up going to a four-year university after you've done your 2 years, then you don't necessarily need to include the four-year school at this point in time.
Okay, so there's a question about, let me scroll back a little bit.
I see
Um,
one
yeah,
here.
go ahead.
Can current high school seniors be grandfathered into the old FAFSA rules? Will they be considered enrolled if they commit to a school before June 30th, 2026? Unfortunately, no. You have to be enrolled in a university. Even if you commit to the school, you won't start until generally later in August or September. So current college students are eligible are eligible to be grandfathered in as long as you've been enrolled in the school before June 30th.
So there are a lot of questions about the sequence of starting FAFSA, and somebody's asking, does the parent need to create the account first, or and then invite the student, or does the order matter?
Yeah, so students will go first and then they'll submit the invitation to their contributors. And
Nice and
then
fresh and hot.
Oops. Go ahead.
yeah, so then they'll invite you can create your accounts simultaneously, or it doesn't matter. A parent will need the FSA ID, a student will need the FSA ID, so you can do that
Separately.
simultaneously.
And it doesn't matter the order of
Yeah,
that.
and yeah, whenever that happens, it doesn't really matter. But the student will then need to invite the contributor. So in most cases that will be a parent or both parents. They will need to then be invited into the FAFSA by the student.
So I hope that that's clear. So parents and students can set up their FSA IDs independent of each other. It doesn't matter who sets it up first, but in terms of actually starting the FAFSA,
Mhm,
it is best if your student starts it. They will have to start it, and then they will invite you to be a contributor.
mhm. Now, here's a question. Maybe one of the parents doesn't provide support. Do they need to be on the FAFSA? What if they provide minimum child support? Um, it can vary based on the legal status of the marriage. If there is, I'm not sure if there is, if you are married or not, but otherwise, whoever is providing the primary care or the majority of care for the child is going to be the contributor. If there is some kind of minimal support, in the case of like divorce situations, um, the parent who does provide the primary support for the child will be the one who is the contributor on the FAFSA.
Oh, okay. It's an interesting question. We have high school seniors that are enrolled in concurrent credit classes, officially enrolled in college, and they're getting credits. So they're enrolled in college, getting credits, but they're still high school students. Does that mean they might be eligible to be grandfathered?
Great question. I don't think so, but
I think that there is a requirement. I don't know offhand what it is about how. much you're like how many credits you're enrolled for.
Yeah, that'd be something I need to check on. Is this a dual enrollment situation? I don't
Kind of
know.
sounds a
I
little
guess
bit
we,
like
yeah,
that.
we can,
Yeah.
we can follow up. Yeah, if I don't know who asked that question, if you can follow up, just email whenever you get the recording and the email tomorrow. If you can follow up with your question, that'd be great.
Is the grandfathering in only for Parent Plus loans, or is this for federal subsidized and unsubsidized?
Great question. It's for the Parent Plus. So let me go back.
Yeah. So the subsidized and unsubsidized loans are continuing the way they work today. So nothing's changing about those. It's only Parent Plus loans that are changing.
Thank you.
Okay, here's a question. I'm just chuckling because we get it a lot. Um, since the students are legal adults, what if parents do not want to contribute to paying for college? What can the student do for financial assistance?
Yeah. So the expectation that colleges will have will be that parents do contribute. If a parent is unwilling to contribute, that's going to put the student in a really difficult position. Um, in terms of, let me, so we'll we'll cover this a little bit more, but let me come to the, you know, a student could try to petition to become an independent, to be considered independent. Um, Now, again, this has a very strict definition because it doesn't consider a parent's unwillingness to pay for college as a parameter for approval. Um, the expectation that colleges do have is that a parents will be involved. Of course, there are exceptions to that, right? In cases of abuse at home, anything like that, where a child has been is in direct harm, colleges are willing to exclude that parent from the equation. But in that case, I guess outside of that case, the expectation is that parents will be considered. Otherwise, most parents would sort of emancipate their children uh, and to avoid paying for college. Um, So I've worked with a student directly in which that did happen. It was a really challenging situation. They had a complicated home life. Um, I don't recommend putting a student through that process, because namely they will either have to uh, take part-time classes, potentially do more of a community college route, which many students have done, to then transfer into 4 years. They may, unless a student qualifies for significant either need-based or merit-based scholarship to help defray the cost of college, then I wouldn't want a student to be saddled with unbearable amounts of debt. And a lender will not lend to, will not lend to a student without a co-signer if they don't have any kind of credit history. So it places the student in a really precarious situation that I would hope to avoid if at all possible. I hope that made
Uh,
sense.
uh-huh. Here's a question I'm not sure I know the answer to either. There's somebody saying, if I live in a rented home, but I also own a home in a different state, but they're renting a home due to work, so because of work situations they have to live someplace else. Can the owned property still be considered their primary residence for FAFSA purposes?
Great question. So it might depend on where you spend over half of your time. I would need to check on this own home versus rented out of state home. Um, it could depend on where you spend over half of your time in terms of the residence. If you're living most of the year in a rented home, or in a rental property. Yeah, that's a good question. If I need to follow up on this one.
Oh, they like the example they're giving is like a military family that had to move, to a different state because of they due to orders that they have.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a great question. I haven't come across the question before, but it's a great one that I'll follow up on.
Okay, well, it's 10 o'clock. We could probably continue for another 2 hours, but and lots of good questions. Thank you, Eddie, for your expertise and your time. And if people have more questions, feel free to reach out. You can reach out to us at Rhodes College, and we can always like ask these questions to Juno. And also feel free, and I had put it a few times in the chat, but you'll get a link tomorrow to sign up for Juno now. It is, and I also wrote this in the chat, there is no obligation that you have to take out a loan, that you will need to take out a loan, but by signing up for Juno now, it just helps to increase the number of families who are kind of part of the membership, and it will increase the power that Juno has to negotiate better interest rates for everybody who's part of the membership. So it's a positive thing to do for you and for other families.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining, for all your great questions. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thanks everyone. See you again soon, I'm sure. Thanks, Eddie. Bye, good night.